to our Mission Control webinar. This webinar series is presented by Certiverse. If you're not familiar with Certiverse, we are an all-in-one, end-to-end online exam development and delivery platform. Our award-winning technology is designed to make every step of test creation more efficient, more inclusive, and less costly. We'd love to tell you more about how we do that. So after the webinar, reach out by visiting certiverse.com to schedule some time to chat. If you've been here before, you know that in order to keep this presentation to 30 minutes, we ask that you put any questions into the group chat and we will make sure to respond to them. For those of you attending a Certiverse webinar for the first time, welcome. And to those of you who have attended before, thanks for coming back. As some of you may know, my name is Byinna, and I'm the Director of Business Development for Certiverse. I will be your moderator for today, and I'm joined by two lovely ladies, testing industry experts, and actually two of my favorite people, Inayah and Bailey. And the question today is, how can I gear up for global growth? But before we get started with the discussion, Inayah, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little about your background?
Absolutely. Thanks, Byinna. Hi, everyone. My name is Inayah Lakhani, and I work at Braze. I'm the certification program manager there, which means I lead our amazing certification program and certification team. I've been at Braze for about 2.5 years, and I have a strong background in education, and I'm really interested in creating educational experiences for learners. So our certification program is nested under our customer and partner education team. I see a couple of folks here on the call too, so I want to shout them out. And just a little bit of background about Braze. So we are a leading customer engagement platform. We have over 1,500 employees across the world, so really relevant to this global conversation that we're having. We have about 2,000 customers, and we have customers that are going to sound familiar to some of you all. Companies like Burger King, Canva, Elf, Max, Rakuten, and The Guardian. And so the Braze certification program is just a few years old. We're fairly new, all things considered. And really our goal is to validate knowledge and skills in the Braze platform. We have 5 live exams today, and we have over 5,000 achieved certifications. So we're really proud to have folks certified across the globe in various industries, various different roles. And I'm here to talk to you all about some of the ways in which we've expanded globally.
Awesome. Thanks, Inayah. Bailey, can you tell the audience about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey Smith. I am the Director of Client Success here at Certiverse. I'm happy to join everyone that's on this call. I've had about 10 years in the testing industry, focused on higher education all the way through certification. Most recently, I've been focusing on certifications and the market and how to grow with our clients. I've had the pleasure of working with Inayah over at Braze and just really looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Bailey. So, Inayah, like Bailey, I've had the pleasure of working with you for a couple of years now and really watching you grow the Braze certification program. So before we get into our very first question, can you just kind of give a little history about your certification program from when the time you took over to how it has evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say in general, the history of the program is that we've been around for about 3 years, like I said. We've gone through a number of iterations in our program, so ebbs and flows and how we identify various different program goals, various big bets for our program. And I'd say generally in terms of how we identify and evaluate potential growth areas, there's a number of different avenues that we use to do that. Generally, for a certification program, our growth areas are really defined as an increase in our portfolio. So that would mean more exams and generally testing to various different topics. So a few of those are that sometimes as a company, Braze, again, is a customer engagement platform. It's a SaaS company. And so there's various features or maybe even an area of focus for the business. So sometimes when it comes to identifying and evaluating an area of growth, we're really just following in suit with what the company identifies as a specific area of focus. So again, if we have a new feature, oftentimes it makes sense for our educational material to follow that specific feature release or to follow an area of focus. And then our certifications really just follow that as well. So we work really hard to ensure that there's a really seamless system when it comes to our educational content and then to our certification program. And I'd say the second area and the way that we identify and evaluate growth oftentimes is a combination of insights from various types of market research. We have a lot of in-person events at Braze. We work really closely with our partners and our customers. So oftentimes we're really on the ground talking to our customers and partners and understanding maybe what a specific persona is of someone that uses the platform. So I'll give a really good tangible example there. We have an exam called the Braze Digital Strategist. And so essentially that digital strategist persona was really born through a number of conversations with internal stakeholders, with partners, even with customers, and understanding with our various teams internally what really is the persona of someone who's building an overall marketing strategy that works with Braze. And so from there, our educational teams really worked to create an idea of if someone is leading a brand strategy, what are skills that they need, what are tools that they have to use within Braze. And we really created that idea and that persona of a person, and then followed that with creating educational experiences like courses, live trainings. And then, like I said, certifications is really the end of that educational experience. So we try to make sure that we're working holistically from the beginning all the way to the end. And so that's another example of how we identified growth is, again, sometimes it's a priority for the business, and sometimes it's really just tapping into what's happening on the ground and understanding how people are using Braze as a platform, and maybe even us guiding the conversation to say, here's a tool that you should be using if you are in a specific field or a specific work that you're doing with Braze.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can you give us an idea about how much your program has grown over the last 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently we actually hit a major milestone. We hit 5,000 certifications as a program. And so just to kind of give context, like I said, we're about 3 years old, but most of that growth has actually happened in the past 2 years. So we've done a little bit more than 50%. We've done a little bit more than doubling our program just in the past 2 years. So I'd say majority of the growth has actually happened fairly recently in the program's history. And I think a lot of that was due to a number of pivots that we made as a program, introducing specific new exams, again, like this digital strategist exam that I mentioned. But also, I think a big part of that was honestly moving to Certiverse was a big part of our growth as well. So finding ways to become more agile and efficient as a program has been a big lever to our growth. And that's been a really big part of being able to increase our program scope, to be able to say something like, you know, we have an exam experience that's really going to be seamless, that's going to be quick, that's going to really be agile and, you know, grow as Braze grows as a program and Braze certification grows. So I'd say a lot of our growth there has definitely been, it's been a testament to the partnership with Certiverse. But that's really been some of our growth in the past few years.
No, that's great. And, you know, we love to hear that. We definitely are try to focus on allowing our customers to grow their program. So that is good to hear that we are successful in that way. So excuse me, when we talk about expanding and growing your certification program, there are different like areas of growth, right? You can expand into new geographies or more diverse groups, different experience levels. So can you talk to me, Inayah, about maybe for you, which came first? Was it increasing program offerings or just expanding your geographic reach?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say the answer to this question is that it's been a little bit of both. It's been a little bit of all of it. So I think it's not generally, I think the educational offerings that we have as a program haven't necessarily been so linear that it's like one specific area that we're either increasing our program offerings or increasing global reach. Typically, we're kind of doing both at once. But I'd say generally the answer to this question is that yeah, it's been really a dual and simultaneous effort. So we have done both. We've done both increasing our program scope as well as actually significantly increasing our program's global footprint. So I think a big part of that is that Braze as a company has expanded into numerous countries in the last few years. And so the growth of our program geographically has really been organically moving with the company's expansion and the company's reach. And so practically what this really means is Braze as a product, as it kind of grows globally, has made decisions strategically to localize in various different languages. And so oftentimes when the decision comes to our team, we localize in the languages that our platform does, right? So we follow kind of that overall strategy. And in terms of which comes first, I'd say honestly, the answer is kind of both. Hopefully it's not a cop-out answer to say it's neither one that comes first, but generally what we're trying to do is we're trying to focus in two different areas. We're trying to make sure that we are increasing our program's actual reach in terms of the kinds of exams that we're offering, the ways in which our portfolio expands. But then we're also working on the ground with a lot of our partners in various parts of the world, oftentimes in Braze offices that we have in different countries. And we're trying to ensure that we have localized content for folks in that specific region. And so a good example of that is that we have one of our level 1 exams that's translated into Japanese. And we have a great team over in Japan in our office. And so they assist us really closely and they partner with us to ensure that we're getting all that information out for the exam on the ground, that we're ensuring that all of our materials are translated. And so I'd say that honestly, both these things are happening simultaneously. And it's really important that they are happening simultaneously, because I think if we are doing either just focusing on program offerings or either focusing on geographic reach, then we're doing a disservice to either area of growth in our program.
And that is not a cop-out answer. I think that is a great response. But just to expand on that from a different perspective, Bailey, you lead customer success and you interact with clients and their programs daily. Are you ever able to suggest how a client should consider expanding or when?
Yeah, just to kind of go off what Inayah was mentioning, I think, in my opinion, both, the geographic expansion and just the organic growth of the program, they do go hand in hand. A lot of times when I see obstacles in an organization or a program, a lot of times it comes down to resources. And that's tough because, needing to do or wanting to do things and just not having enough bodies to get it done can be frustrating. In my opinion, when a client is looking for growth and really wanting to expand their program, sometimes it would be easier or more cost efficient to translate an existing exam. So that localization, sometimes it's easier to get a resource in to do translation of the exam and the content without having to do a heavier lift and creating a whole new exam. I do think it's, not to plug Certiverse, but this is a Certiverse webinar. When you have that translation in place, we already support so many languages in our exam delivery. So I think that is helpful for our clients, and it's easy for them to kind of lay a path forward on how to really move their program along.
That's excellent, especially like you said, if the funds aren't there, there's still an opportunity to go ahead and expand the program. Inayah, you talked about growing your program in such a short amount of time. I am sure there were bumps along the way. Can you share maybe some of your biggest obstacles and how you overcame them?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd say there's honestly a number of things that I could really point to when it comes to obstacles along the way with growth. But I'd say generally one of the things that comes to mind is, and this is something that my education team talks about a lot, is that when it comes to growing any kind of educational experience, like a certification program, it's really a labor of love and a labor of time, right? So there's a lot that goes into creating a really strong educational program that is legally defensible, that you can say is a really strong program that, folks would want to engage in. And especially when it comes to a certification exam, essentially what you're telling folks is that this set of information and these set of questions are validating a specific skill. So you want to ensure that it's really, really ironclad, right? And so I think a really big obstacle that we faced as a program is that, in the realm of education and in the bubble of education, folks understand how much time these things take, right? It takes time to go through a process of creating a blueprint. It takes time to understand what a persona looks like. It takes time to gather subject matter experts and really create a full exam. And I think in the scope of the world of tech that, that I work in, sometimes the product itself is moving so quickly. We're, really used to quick advancements that it takes some time to really get folks bought into this idea that an educational experience is not going to come that quickly. And I say that from a place of saying that, we've created significant efficiencies in our process, and it is a lot quicker than it used to be. But I'd say one obstacle is really helping folks within the actual organization understand what it takes to create an exam. And I think, to Bailey's point, resourcing is obviously always an issue, I think, at any organization. But I think one thing that we've done that's helped, both the resourcing constraint issue, as well as the issue that I just mentioned, or the obstacle I mentioned, is to really have folks across the organization get continuously involved in these processes of creating exams. So that's a way that we've overcome some of these issues, is that when we've really spread out the reach of our subject matter experts across the company, and when we spread out the reach of the folks across the company that have engaged with our program, they really begin to get bought into this idea to say, now that I've seen this final product of this exam, I can see why it takes X amount of time to build. They really start to get bought into this idea that educational experiences take time, but also that we need buy-in from the full company to be able to achieve those kinds of results. And so I think it becomes a lot easier to get folks across the company to really, serve as subject matter experts to help us along this journey. And that really solves, both obstacles, which is one, it helps us with resource constraint, where we have more and more people that are willing to help us out. But two, it helps us with, getting folks to understand how long this process takes when they themselves are involved in the process.
So you touched on something that I think is really important, getting buy-in. Can you tell us a little bit more? How were you able to get buy-in from your senior leadership to grow your program and say, hey, we need to expand? And how did you get them on board?
Yeah, so I'd say there's a few different things that we've done there. One of the biggest things that I have to say is that this is not a solo effort by any means, right? So I'd say that the biggest thing is that we have a very, very dedicated customer partner education team that focuses on various areas. So we have folks focusing on, curriculum content like courses. We have someone taking care of, training. Obviously, I lead up certifications. And then we have, we have a director in our team that really oversees all of that, as well as a vice president who really ensures that these kinds of messages are really permeating every part of the organization and the company. So I'd say that the biggest way that we've done that is really to ensure that we are, inserting ourselves into various rooms, making sure that we have seats at various tables, and to make sure that education is a huge part of the conversation. And I think really what it is at the end of the day is that it's kind of back to what I said in the last question, which is that I think when folks understand the impact of education within an organization, it's so much easier to really get them bought into this entire process, right? So in terms of getting senior leadership bought in, once they see that, by getting certifications, folks are more engaged with Braze as a platform. When they see that by having more certifications, you could have a more sophisticated user that's maybe accessing parts of your tool or features that they might not have before. I think when they start to see those kinds of metrics that we have and really see those success stories, that buy-in becomes so much easier, right? Because what you're saying is, if you want folks to use Braze in a really sophisticated manner, they have to have educational content to understand how to use this specific feature or how to use this part of the platform. So I'd say that the biggest thing there is, continuing to really push at this strategy to say that education really creates great users, and it really creates a strong Braze community. And we've seen that really firsthand. And so really just, ensuring that we are part of the conversation at every level has been important. And again, I think the big thing there is really just pushing the message up. So I'd say that a really big part of it is that, I do my best to really be in all those conversations. And where I'm not, I know that the folks that are above me, they're in those conversations on like a higher level when it comes to building the actual strategy for the business.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think that's an area where people run into problem is getting that buy-in. So I just a little bit longer want to stick with this obstacle question. You mentioned something very important, that you're in tech and tech changes so fast. So how are you able to keep up with the fast pace when you're adding new programs and trying to grow your program and adding new certifications?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, I'd say we're figuring it out, like as it changes, right? Pretty fairly often. I'd say that the biggest thing there is actually something that one of the directors on our team actually says really often, or he has said before, which is that it's important to have a roadmap, right? As a tech company, as a program within a tech company, it's really important to have a roadmap and to have an understanding of the direction that we're going in. But it's almost equally important to be able to actually adjust that roadmap, right? So I think a part of being an agile program is that you're able to recognize when, you know, headwinds are changing, when there's a new feature, when there might be low adoption to a specific feature, to be able to actually adjust our roadmap and say, hey, we had this one micro credential planned for a specific quarter. We might actually have to shift that. We might actually have to focus on this specific feature instead. And so I'd say that the biggest way that we do that, and to answer your question, is that we work really closely with our product teams. We work really closely with our support teams, our success teams. So really, the small example of that is if we're monitoring support tickets and we see that there's a specific area or a specific feature that's really causing, you know, a number of support tickets to come in. There's a lot of questions around an area. That could be a really good way for us to decide that maybe we need a small, either like a micro-credential exam, or maybe on the curriculum side, we need more like curriculum content around a specific area. So again, I think to answer your question, we just try to be as agile as possible. We try to, you know, plan as much as we can. But then again, as a tech company, and as a program nested within a tech company, we're really just trying to ensure that we can adjust where needed. So as things are happening, we're trying to adjust as a program.
Yeah, we have enjoyed being on this journey with you. So shifting gears a little, you guys know that I'm in sales, and when I meet with prospects, one of the first things they tell me is that they have a goal of growing their program, right? And so everyone in that situation can clearly define what growth looks like. But Inayah, can you maybe take it a step further and tell us what success looks like? What were your metrics for measuring the success of your expansion?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're a very, very data-driven company and a very data-driven program. So we have a number of different metrics of success. And I'd say that generally from, you know, quarter to quarter or year to year, we're looking at various different areas of success. So there might be different ways to define success, which I think is really important as a program. It's important to look at different lenses. To say maybe success for us looks like X this quarter, but Y another quarter. But I'd say generally the short of it is that as a certification program, I think it's really easy to measure success, because success for us is really just the reach of our program and the engagement of our program, right? So I'd say that like at a very basic level, as we continue to expand our program and we continue to expand that reach and that scope, we're really looking at how many certification exams we're delivering. We're looking at how many folks are getting certified, right? So oftentimes taking a look at, you know, the number of folks that take an exam versus the number of folks that actually pass an exam. So those are metrics that we monitor really, really closely with a lot of the reporting metrics that we have in Certiverse. And then I'd say that the slightly more nuanced and maybe holistic answer is that, as I've mentioned a couple of times, we work really closely with our larger learning team. And so when we're looking at metrics for success, when it comes to expansion, we're oftentimes looking at this larger picture of a learner within Braze learning. And so we're looking at a learner's engagement and pass-through rates from some of our courses, from some of our live training events that we have, to our certification exams. So really what we're looking at is when folks are actually entering Braze learning and they engage in a course, how often are they actually completing a learning pathway and maybe taking an exam? And so those kinds of measures of success are really important for us, because what it's really telling us is that folks are moving through the entire journey, A to Z, and really ending up at a certification exam, being as prepared as possible with our learning content. And so I'd say that measure of success is really defined by the engagement with Braze learning. And then later in the life cycle, I think a really big metric for us for success is whether or not these individuals actually come back into our program. And so a good example of that is that we have certifications, our certifications expire after a certain period of time. So do we have learners that are re-engaging at that period of time when they need to get recertified? Do they come and do they re-enter the actual life cycle of like a Braze learner? And so I think that's really important. And when we're talking within the scope of global reach, right, in this conversation, I think a really big metric of success there is how much are we seeing engagement with some of our localized content, right? So if we have our exams that are translated, how much are we seeing that, you know, that exam is getting a specific reach? And we'll compare it oftentimes to the metrics that we have for our program in English, in like the default language, right? So if we say, you know, we have an exam that was released and within the first month, this is how much growth it saw, right? We'll look at that same exam when it's actually released in a localized language and try to see if we can compare that growth side by side. And so I think it's really important for us to have metrics that are baseline and then to have, you know, comparison points to some of our localized content. So that's one way that we use to measure some of the success of some of those global programs.
I am going
Great.
to jump in and pause because we are just about at time, but we do have a few questions that came up in the Q&A, so we will get to those while folks are around. And the first one was, which were there specific hurdles that you faced with exam translation?
Yes, definitely. So we face a number of different hurdles when it comes to exam translation. I'm trying to see if I can keep this as succinct as possible. I'd say the biggest hurdle there is I think having the right resources to be able to translate your material in the most efficient way possible. So what I mean is trying to, you know, find translation services that can translate your material quickly, but also correctly in the ways that you need it to. And so I'd say that that's one of the biggest hurdles. We do have a localization team, so we don't struggle with the resourcing, I'd say. We're definitely privileged in that way at Braze. But I'd say one of the biggest ways is just in the translation services, and then also in being able to connect and understand that a learning experience might be very different for a learner in the States than it might be for a learner that's maybe in another country, another region. So we've definitely learned that in the process for translation, is that sometimes you do have to change the way that you're even thinking about a learner's experience based on the region that they're in.
Great.
Andrew, do we have time for another question?
I think so. We've got
Okay,
2 more
great.
minutes, but I will say if you know, if we get to the end of time and you do want to get any more information, the ways to reach out to us are available on screen as well. But actually, our last 2 questions are sort of similar. It is folks who are specifically curious about the experience that you had with Certiverse and the impact of vendor on your success and on your experience. So if you did want to share a little bit about that, this is the time. We were specifically asked.
Absolutely, happy to. So I'd say that Certiverse has definitely impacted our success by like huge strides. I'd say specifically to focus on 1 or 2 areas. I think one of the ways that Certiverse has really upskilled our program is that we just have a much more advanced way of now delivering exams. So I'd say that the experience of actually being able to log on, we as a program typically use the AI proctored function within Certiverse. So I'm going to focus there and say that we've had some really great feedback on that experience end to end of, you know, going through an exam and having it be a really quick process of actually getting up to speed and getting registered with the exam. And then all throughout taking the actual exam itself, the proctoring process has been really great for our learners. And we've seen a huge uptick in the number of folks that have taken exams on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. We've seen a huge increase in our program and gotten a lot of positive feedback about the ways in which our exams are administered with Certiverse. And I could talk about so many more things. I know that we're at time, but I will say the last thing there is that the Certiverse team has been extremely adaptable to all the requests that we have as a program. So we come to them really often and say, I need this, or I need X, Y, and Z feature. Let's talk about the ways in which reporting could help our program a little bit more. And they're very, very adaptable to those kinds of requests.
That's awesome to hear. And I know we're at time. So for those who are interested, Inayah has so much great information that we will be distributing a white paper soon that focuses on some of our conversation here today about how the Braze program has grown. So make sure to look out for that. We appreciate your attendance and thank you for joining us today. Inayah, thank you so much. Bailey, thank you.
Of course, happy to be here.